You think about the last time you perhaps applied for a job, there may have been some sort of psychological testing was done, some form of IQ testing. And now some new research done by the University of Sydney's Business School has found that many people who perform well in these intelligence tests, which can be used as selection tools by employers, they don't always make the best job candidates. Now, one of those involved with this research is senior lecturer Dr. Stefan Volk. He's a senior lecturer in management at the University of Sydney's Business School, and he's on the line. Dr. Volk, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you very much. So what are some of the traps, the pitfalls of relying on these intelligence tests when it comes to selecting the right candidate for a job?
So what we do in our research in general is we apply neuroscience research to problems in the business world. And in this context, we have looked at neuroscience research related to intelligence. And when you look at intelligence from a neuroscience perspective, you see that there is a very specific brain region which is very much involved in the level of intelligence that we can achieve. That is the so-called working memory system. And this system stores all the information that is available to us at a certain point of time that we can consciously use to make decisions to solve problems. And there's a very close relationship between intelligence and this working memory system. So intelligence is about effectively using information, and working memory is about storing information and making it available. So you can only use information that is stored in this working memory system to make informed decisions and to be intelligent in a sense.
And what you've found in some of these cases is that, where they do well in these intelligence tests, they don't always have the capacity to multitask some of the other cognitive demands, and so therefore that they may not be the best candidate for the job.
Exactly. This is because this working memory has a limited capacity. There are two types of intelligence, what we found or what we defined as two types of intelligence. One is what we call intelligence capacity. That is the maximum level of intelligence that you can achieve in a restricted test environment. That's a classical intelligence test, pencil and paper based, where you sit in a room, you take the test, and you don't have any distracting things which are using up some of this limited storage capacity. This is what employers typically use to select candidates. However, there's another form of intelligence which we call realized intelligence, and that is the intelligence that you can actually realize in real-world work settings where you have to multitask, where you have to do several things at the same time. All these different things are tapping into your available resources, brain resources, and reduce your ability to store information for intelligence.
But those people won't necessarily come up best on the intelligence tests.
That is exactly the point. Those people who perform best in terms of intelligence capacity, that is those people who do best in traditional tests, are not the same people who do best in terms of realized intelligence. That is in terms of how they can actually apply the intelligence in work settings.
So what happens? I mean, maybe employers will say, well, look, it's the best measure we've got. We look at the HSC now. That is used to produce an ATAR. That's then used to determine who gets into which university courses and who don't. But we also know there are plenty of cases where people mature at different rates. Some people go on to do very well at university, having not done so well at the HSC.
Exactly. This is not only applying to the workplace, it's also applying to universities and high schools. It is a question of what kind of intelligence do people need for certain tasks.
Yes.
Some people, like researchers who work in a restrained environment, they need a high level of intelligence capacity.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong about having a high level of intelligence capacity, but it's not the best thing for every job. And so far, employers, universities, high schools have always assumed that those people with high intelligence capacity, that is those people who perform best in traditional tests, are always the best, which is not true, as you just suggested. There are people who are doing well despite the fact that they haven't performed well in these tests.
Well, you would probably see cases, mature age students and others who perhaps didn't even complete their HSC, got into a university course another way and have turned out to be very good students. Whether they go on then to make good employees in that field, well, that's another question again, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this is something that organizations need to be aware of. They need to specifically define what kind of intelligence, what kind of skills do we need for certain tasks. And then we argue based on this, they should use different tests. In our research, we're also proposing new tests, new ways of testing intelligence, which can actually measure realized intelligence.
Right,
Depending on the task demands you have, you should use different tests and employ different people.
Yeah, and so a real-life test will be the way to go. Well, it certainly is food for thought. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
All the best to you. Thank you. Dr.
Thanks.
Stefan Volk, who's a senior lecturer in management at the University of Sydney's Business School, he makes a very fair point. That those who perform well in some of these intelligence tests don't necessarily have the multitasking skills that are going to make them good employees in all situations. And of course, you've also got to think as well, those psychological tests, the intelligence tests that some employers will make potential candidates sit, they've also got to then be balanced up against references that might come with that person and what the word on the street is about the person, and of course, how they perform in interviews as well. Because that is going to be another critical part when you're trying to piece the puzzles together in terms of who will make the best candidate for a position. You think, well, yes, we've got some good references here. How did they go in the interview? Do we think they can perhaps overcome some of the deficiencies elsewhere by what we've heard in the interview? All things that employers need to keep in mind, employees as well.